Now imagine waking up 10 years from now, never needing to work again. No boss, no alarm clocks, just freedom. Sounds like a fantasy, especially if you've got next to nothing in savings, right? But here's the truth, you don't need a lottery win or a six-figure salary to retire early. Whilst most people in the UK grind away for 40 plus years just to maybe retire at 67, there's a faster, smarter, more sensible way, and it's called FIRE. That is financial independence, retire early. And in layman's terms, it's a strategy where people try to save and invest a large part of their income so they can stop working much earlier than the traditional retirement age. The problem? Well, most people hear about FIRE, get inspired, and then get overwhelmed and lose track. So in this video, I'm giving you 5 clear practical steps to retire in just 10 years. That's from zero to hero. And I'll show you how someone just like you did exactly that. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, if you're working a job that barely covers your bills, and you're wondering how anyone ever gets ahead of that game, this video is exactly for you. If you can master these steps, you could realistically leave the rat race in 10 years. Now, this isn't a get rich quick fantasy, it's a get smart strategy. So stick around, because in segment 2, I'm going to reveal a little known UK tax allowance that could shave years off your journey to financial freedom. And most people completely overlook it. But first, let's talk about you and your money. You don't need a six-figure salary or a trust fund to achieve financial independence. What you do need is intent. Being smart with how you earn, how you spend, and how you save. The FIRE movement, again, that's financial independence, retire early, often gets mistaken as something only for high earners. Not true. FIRE can be for anyone willing to make strategic and sometimes unconventional decisions about how they live and save. It's about choosing to live well with less, saving more of what you make, and eventually reaching a point where work is a choice, not a necessity. And let's be honest, very few people have zero in their pension or savings, but we meet clients all the time who saved far less than they'd hoped. Now, the good news, you don't need a perfect past. You just need a solid plan going forward. One of the best first steps, automation. Set up some automatic transfers to a savings or investment account as soon as your income hits your account. No guesswork, no missteps, no forgetfulness, just clear, consistent progress towards your goals. Now, over time, this creates compound growth, meaning your money works for harder for you, growing faster without you having to do anything at all. Now, here's something worth your attention. According to a 2024 survey by Finder, the average UK adult has just £11,185 in savings. That's less than the full state pension. Even more eye-opening, nearly half of people have £1,000 or less, and a quarter have under £200 savings. Now, that's a problem, but it's also an opportunity, because here's the thing. If you start automating your savings and your investing, you're doing something that 90% of people just aren't. You're positioning yourself for financial success whilst others are scrambling to catch up. And the difference? Well, you don't need to wait decades to see it. With the right approach, you can retire early, and the tools are already available. A stocks and shares ISA lets your money grow tax-free, so your investments compound without getting hit by taxes. For the 2025-2026 tax year, the limit is £20,000, and every pound you invest within that limit has the potential to grow much faster than money sitting in a regular savings account. And here's the bottom line: financial independence is not reserved for the lucky few. If you commit to consistently saving and investing, you can cut your path to financial freedom short. It's not about how much you earn, it's about how much you save and how wisely you use the tools at your disposal. Now, you can build the kind of wealth that lets you decide when to retire, not just when the government says you can, and that is powerful. Now, tax. Tax efficiency is one of the most powerful ways to grow your wealth. The less tax you pay, the wealthier you will stay. By understanding the various schemes and allowances available, you can reduce your tax burden and make more of your income work for you. Here's how you can optimize your finances in 2025 and beyond. So in the 2025-2026 tax year, the UK income tax system works in bands. The first £12,570 of your income is tax-free thanks to the personal allowance. The next £37,000 $47,700 is taxed at the basic rate of 20%, so a higher rate tax of 40% is only due once you earn over £50,271. Now anything above £125,140 is taxed at the additional rate of 45%. If you weren't sure what I said there, just rewind a little bit, write it down on a bit of paper so you've got it handy. Now one important thing to note is that the personal allowance starts to taper off once your income exceeds £100,000, and it's completely phased out once you earn over £125,140. This means that if you're earning in that range, you're effectively paying tax on a very large portion of your income. Now these tax thresholds have been frozen until at least 2028, which means that over time more and more people are likely to find themselves in higher tax bands simply due to inflation and wage increases. Now one of the smartest ways to reduce your taxable income is by contributing more to a pension. For the 25-26 tax year, you can contribute up to £60,000 annually into a pension, or 100% of your taxable earnings, whichever is the lower. So the best part, you can get tax relief on all contributions into a pension within the limits. If you're a high earner, please be mindful though that the annual allowance might taper down for incomes above 260 grand, but for most, pension contributions are a brilliant way to lower your tax bill. Now you will get tax relief on your pension contributions, but it might happen in a couple of different ways. Usually it's called tax relief at source or tax relief via your self-assessment, and depending how you're contributing to your pension, we'd be able to help you understand how to get that tax relief back based on what tax band you're in. Let's talk a bit about ISAs, because these are one of the easiest ways to keep your investments growing without paying tax. In 2025-26, you can contribute up to £20,000 across different types of ISAs. You've got cash ISAs, stocks and shares ISAs, or you've got innovative finance ISAs. That's probably one you haven't heard of. This means that any interest, dividends or capital gains within your ISA are entirely tax-free, allowing your savings to grow at a faster rate than if you were taxed. Now if you're under 40, the lifetime ISA, or Lisa as she's known, offers an incredible opportunity to boost your savings. You can contribute up to £4,000 a year, and the government will give you a 25% bonus on your contributions. That's up to £1,000 annually just by saving in a ISA. This can be used towards a first home or save for retirement, and it's an excellent way to lock in tax-free growth with the added bonus of government support. Now when it comes to selling investments or property, you've got capital gains tax, CGT, and the exemption for the 2025-2026 tax year is a measly £3,000. This means that you can make up to £3,000 in capital gains without paying any tax, but beyond that, the tax rate depends on your income tax band. You've got 18% CGT for basic rate taxpayers, you've got 24% for higher rate taxpayers, and you've got 28% for those in the additional rate tax band. Dividend income is also an area where you can save on tax. In the 25-26 tax year, for example, you can earn up to £500 in dividends without paying any tax. If you exceed this threshold, the tax rate will depend on your income band. You got 8.75% for basic rate taxpayers, 33.75% for higher rate taxpayers, and a bonkers 39.35% tax for additional rate taxpayers. Now if you're on a low income, the Help to Save scheme is a fantastic way to get a boost on your savings. You can save between £1 a month and £50 a month, and for every £1 you save, the government will add 50p. And over 4 years, this could give you a maximum bonus of £1,200. It's a great way to save for the future, especially for those of you who qualify for universal credit, because the eligibility criteria have been expanded to include a wider range of working claimants. Incorporating these tax-saving strategies into your financial plan is one of the smartest ways to retain more of your income and accelerate your wealth building efforts. Whether it's through pensions or ISAs or the various government schemes available, there's a canny range of tools you can use to make your money work hard. And as the tax system continues to evolve, staying informed and using these allowances is key to achieving long-term financial success. In segment 3, we're going to dive into practical strategies to reduce expenses and keep your financial goals on track. The key to retiring early is living below your means, and certainly within them, even when your income grows. As your income increases, it's really easy to fall into the trap of upgrading your lifestyle, whether that's buying more expensive things, moving into a bigger house, or dining out more often, or buying more things from Amazon. However, the key is to resist the temptation to inflate your lifestyle and instead continue living as simply as you were before. Now, this means funneling any extra money into your retirement account where it can grow and work harder for you. Remember what I said earlier about automatically saving? When you get a pay rise, why don't you automatically save the difference, and then you're not tempted to get on Amazon or eBay quite so much. Now, another effective way to cut back is by downsizing. This could mean moving to a less expensive area, for example, or cutting back on discretionary spending like luxury items or subscriptions. According to the Money Advice Service, budgeting and cutting unnecessary expenses can add thousands to your savings each year. Imagine the difference over 10 years. Now, to keep track of your progress, why don't you consider using a budgeting app that can be very good in helping you stay on top of your finances and making sure that you're living below your means or at least within them. Now, before we get into today's case study, it's worth addressing a very common misconception. While it's easy to assume that some people reach their 40s, 50s or even 60s with nothing set aside for retirement, that's actually really rare. Most do have something, whether it's a small pension pot, a bit of home equity, or a modest savings balance. But the point I want to stress is this: whether you've got very little saved or you're genuinely starting from zero, your current situation does not define your future. What really matters is what you do next. With the right mindset, a clear strategy and some solid financial advice, it is entirely possible to take control of your future and retire on your terms. Being wealthy is a really vague term, and it means different things to different people. I might suggest that you should think more about being wealthy enough to deliver on your personal goals. You just need a plan, be motivated and willing to put the effort into making and maintaining that personal plan. Right, let's dive into our case study for today and one of our clients who adopted the FIRE strategy with our full support. So Harry, here he is. He was 55 years old. He was a manager at an IT firm and he earned £55,000 a year. So he was just poking into the higher rate tax bracket. Now on paper, he looks like someone in a solid position. He had a steady income, he had decades of experience and a strong work ethic. He was pretty old school, was Harry. Now beneath that surface lies a growing worry. Throughout his whole career, Harry made a decision that's really more common than many realise. He opted out of his workplace pensions. It wasn't out of neglect. At the time, he always felt like it was the right choice because he wanted to enjoy his income while he could and live life for today and all that lovely stuff. You know, life was busy, it was full of everyday expenses, and the joy he found in sailing, that was his passion. And it was a hobby he hoped one day it might turn into a business of his own. He had big dreams, didn't we all, when we were in our 20s, 30s and 40s? Of course we did. Now with retirement creeping ever closer, that decision had taken on new weight. Harry came to Rees for help because he'd had a dream. He wanted to retire at 65, he wanted to enjoy the freedom he'd worked so hard for, and he felt he needed £2,500 a month in retirement, which is pretty close to his net amount from his gross salary currently. Now after discussion, he was prepared to reduce his income expectation to £2,000 per month from 75, really because in his heart of hearts he knew he was a bit off track, but he didn't know how far. Now when we did the maths and he looked at the reality, no pension, no ISA, no savings or emergency fund, it became pretty clear that his dream was way out of reach and he needed a serious rethink. And the good news was he did own his own house. He had put quite a bit of his money into paying his mortgage off, so there was a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel there. Now when we ran the financial forecast, the numbers were pretty sobering. If he retired at 65 and he lived to 90 with no savings in place, he'd need to find almost £122,000 by age 70 and nearly £275,000 by 90, and that was money he didn't have. So really it was crystal clear for all to see. His current path just wasn't sustainable. If nothing changed, the future he'd imagined simply wasn't going to happen. But this moment of realization in reality became the turning point for Harry. What matters most in situations like this isn't where you've been, it's what you choose to do next. And that's why this case study really does matter. It shows that it's not too late. With the right advice and a realistic plan, change is possible. So what did we do at Reeves? Well, we helped Harry reframe his future. Together we explored his options and the lifestyle trade-offs that they involved. What emerged was a practical roadmap with a few different routes to think about. Now this next part is one a lot of people shy away from talking about. It's emotional, it's complicated, but it is very real. Inheritances. They can make a massive difference to someone's retirement plan, especially when time or savings are tight, and let's face it, they were for Harry. He'd already been through a rough patch. To be fair, he'd lost his mum the year before, and his dad Robert was now 80. Robert wasn't really what you'd call wealthy. He didn't have investments all over the place, but what he did own was his home outright, worth about £300,000. He also had a solid British Telecom pension, bringing in £24,000 a year because he'd worked for them for donkeys. Plus his full state pension was payable as well. And when we sat down with Harry, we noticed something very interesting. Robert's monthly income was about £1,000 more than he needed. And over the years, that had quietly built up to nearly £100,000 sitting in his Halifax current account, not really earning much interest at all. It might have been 0.1% or something hopeless like that, but it was just parked there. And if we're honest, Robert was never going to spend most of that money. Harry was understandably hesitant to raise this with his dad because he felt he'd somehow failed, but he decided to have an open and honest conversation. He didn't want to rely on an inheritance, but he knew he needed to plan for his future now while he was still healthy and had time to enjoy life. So he had that tricky chat with his dad. Now, to Harry's surprise, Robert was not only understanding, he was really thankful that his son had come to talk to him about it in the first place. He actually offered to gift Harry £50,000 out of the 100 that was sat doing nothing. He said he would give him that right away, and that one act of support became a turning point. Here's how we made it work hard for his future. So what we recommended was that Harry make a £55,000 gross contribution to his pension that year. Thanks to tax relief, it actually only cost him £44,000, meaning the gift more than covered it. The remaining £6,000, because if you remember, he had £50,000 from his dad, that was directed into an ISA, and it just gave him a bit of an emergency buffer because he didn't have that at the moment. Now from 56 onwards, Harry bit the bullet and committed to £1,250 per month net into his pension. He committed that from his bank account automatically soon as his wages went in. And thanks to basic rate tax relief alone, that became £1,562.50 gross. And assuming a 4% investment growth rate and planning for retirement spending of £2,000 net per month, if you remember, that's what we talked about with Harry to say that's what he'd really need. And he wanted that from age 65 to 75, that's 10 good years. Then he was happy to take £1,500 net per month after 75. Now let's take a look at the graph, and my goodness, what a transformation. Harry's now projected to retire at 65 with a wee surplus. But this wasn't just about the money. That one conversation opened the door to something Harry and his dad had both been avoiding talking about. What would happen if Robert needed long-term care? Now, like many families, they'd never really talked about it. It's brushed under the carpet. But once they did, we helped Robert take some action, updating his late wife's will to protect half the house for the kids and moving his savings into a bond to help guard against care fees. It gave Harry's retirement a real boost and gave Robert some much-needed peace of mind. More importantly, and perhaps most importantly, it brought them closer as dad and son. So if you've been putting off those chats with your parents, maybe now's the time to change that, because it could change everything. Now at Reeves, we never take a one-size-fits-all approach. Instead, we explore different options, we think outside the box, and we're looking to help each client find the right balance between life today and financial freedom tomorrow. For Harry, we looked at what would happen if he were able to achieve investment growth of say 6% as opposed to our conservative stress test approach of 4%. Now all other assumptions stayed the same. Harry would continue contributing £1,250 a month, which if you remember is £1,562.50 gross after tax relief, aiming for a retirement income of £2,000 net per month. That was between ages 65 and 75, and then he's after £1,500 a month from 75 onwards. I'm repeating myself a bit, but it's important. That 2% extra bit of growth made a significant difference. As you can see from the graph, Harry could then retire at 64 with a comfortable surplus, a whole year earlier than before. I mean, really, it's a great example of how small changes in investment performance, when combined with consistent contributions and a clear plan, can significantly shift your retirement landscape. So together, this evolved into Harry's plan. It gave him the confidence he could enjoy life now, but with some compromises to give him the long-term freedom he was dreaming of, and he was prepared to make those compromises because we talked about it. Now, Harry's story is not unusual at all. In fact, it reflects a reality many people face. You might even be thinking, that's me, whilst you're watching this. Life gets in the way, it often does. Retirement feels distant until suddenly it is not. And when it arrives without preparation, the consequences can really be quite devastating. And another harsh truth is you can't have it both ways. You can't have your cake and eat it, as my gran would say. You must find the right balance for you. But what Harry did do, right, was seek some help and advice, and that made all the difference in the end. When he came to Reeves, he was able to turn anxiety into action. Retirement planning isn't about having done everything perfectly, folks. It's just about understanding what's possible, good and bad, and being willing to think and act differently, taking ownership of your future and making informed choices with expert guidance. Well, for starters, please make sure you are part of your workplace scheme. Your employer must pay in 3% if you pay in 5%. And if you opt out, you're basically giving up a 3% pay rise, which seems a little bit daft to me. This case study isn't just about one man's retirement, it's about how financial clarity can change the course of somebody's life. Whether you're 25 or 55, the message really is the same. There's always time to make a better plan. The key is to start the conversation, just like Harry did, with us and with his dad. And when you do, Reeves is here to help you navigate the way forward. Retirement in 10 years might sound impossible, but with the right steps and leaving no stone unturned, it can actually be achievable. So now that you've learned how it's possible to retire in 10 years, starting with next to nothing, it's important to know when the time is right for you to take money out. So next we're going to dive into the pros and cons of annuities versus drawdown and how to choose the best option for your retirement. So click here and I'll see you in the next video.